For all the 90s kids, prepare for the memories. Goldeneye, a licensed game that had no business being any degree of good, yet ended up being one of the most influential first-person shooters of all time, giving validity to the genre on consoles and setting a new standard for split-screen multiplayer. So, here we are, 23 years after release. Does Goldeneye hold up like Casino Royale, or is it best forgotten like Quantum of Solace? Let's find out. When Goldeneye was originally released way back in '97, the first-person shooter genre was very young but very much established, with titles like Doom and Duke Nukem setting the standard, and Quake taking the genre into 3D. However, while shooters were thriving on the PC, when it came to the consoles, the genre wasn't doing super hot. There were some solid ports, Doom in particular having a decent interpretation on the PlayStation, along with some unique but less appreciated efforts like Power Slave on the Sega Saturn. Otherwise, the genre really wasn't well represented on consoles. The problem was, A, console hardware simply didn't compare to the 3D accelerated voodoo magic of PCs, making many console FPSs a step down in terms of graphics and performance, and B, developers had a hard time adapting flexible mouse and keyboard control schemes to the rigid console controllers of the time. But then came Goldeneye. Developed by Rare and meant to coincide with the 90s-tastic movie of the same name, Goldeneye was originally envisioned to be an on-rail shooter like Virtua Cop, but during production, Rare made the decision to redesign the game to be a first-person shooter. And since they were developing exclusively for console, they took the opportunity to rethink the genre's controls and mechanics to gel with the limitations of the N64. It was all around a very good idea. While rudimentary today, Goldeneye's control scheme was a large step forward. Firing your weapon was done with the Z trigger on the back of the N64 controller, mimicking firing an actual gun. Moving and turning is done with the sole analog stick, while strafing and looking up and down is set to the C buttons or the D-pad if you're a lefty. This, of course, was not conducive to accurate or satisfying shooting. To solve this, Rare added auto-aim. Whenever an enemy is in your sights, 007's weapon will automatically snap to them, giving the player a fighting chance. This gave Goldeneye a lot of its run-and-gun charm and made the game's many overcrowded hallways a blast to bulldoze through. Frankly, if this feature wasn't here, Goldeneye wouldn't be super playable. To go along with this, you were also able to go into a manual free aim mode for more precise shots. These innovations were instrumental for the genre in the console market, as just about every console-based shooter after Goldeneye would incorporate these mechanics. Now, despite the innovations here, this was still the early days, and to be honest, playing Goldeneye in 2020 on original hardware can be a hurdle. The shooting mechanics of Goldeneye are still very solid. There's a good feeling of weight and rhythm to firing your weapon and a nice sense of feedback. But actual movement is a bit erratic and lacks finesse. This feels like a twitchy James Bond after an all-night coke bender. It takes a lot of practice to get to the point where you can quickly line up shots without the camera jutting left and right. This is why auto-aim is such a godsend. The downside of auto-aiming though is that you're at the mercy of 007's accuracy. Most of the time you're going to hit the enemies in the chest, which is not the most efficient way to kill them. This is also assuming that the auto-aim is working. Every once in a while, if an enemy is just in the right spot, the feature fails to switch on entirely. Moments like these are when you need the game's manual aiming. Now, if you were skilled enough, this was the way to really conquer Goldeneye, especially on the harder difficulties, as you could walk into a crowded room and just decimate these guys with a series of well-placed headshots. As nice as this mechanic was, by today's standards, it controls clumsily. Aiming in this mode is not a matter of moving the crosshair around the screen, but rather pulling it away from the center. This means getting an accurate shot sometimes calls for a thumb war to keep the joystick steady. It's like aiming with a rubber band around your arm. I really have to admit, I kind of struggled with Goldeneye just getting reacquainted with the controls. But on top of that, Goldeneye in general is just a tough-ass game. Goldeneye is comprised of 20 missions, 2 of them secret, loosely based on scenes from the movie. Where other FPSs at the time basically had you collecting keys or finishing button sequences, Goldeneye gave you actual objectives to complete in each mission. Objectives like taking photos for evidence, disarming bombs, protecting people, or blowing up technology. In a stroke of brilliance though, the game added more objectives depending on what difficulty you chose. So for example, in the first level on the Agent difficulty, all you have to do is get to the end of the level and jump off the dam, whereas on Secret Agent, you have to destroy all of the alarms, and on 00 Agent, you have to do that on top of installing a covert modem and intercepting a data backup. Objectives that take you into a totally different part of the level. This added a mountain of replay value to the game and challenges the player to play for the fastest completion times for each difficulty in every mission. Now, the tricky thing about Goldeneye is that there's not a ton of hints on how to complete objectives, and the solutions typically come from a lot of trial and error. Don't be surprised if you find yourself running around in circles trying to figure out what the hell you need to do when suddenly, by pure chance, you stumble upon the solution. Huh, there's a looker right there. But trial and error in these levels is only one facet. Often the game just demands perfection from the player. There are no checkpoints in Goldeneye or any health pickups besides body armor. You gotta complete these missions in one go, and if you die, tough. You gotta start over from the beginning. This is some straight up old school difficulty. And while it's not quite as brutal in the first handful of missions, it's not long before Goldeneye starts leaving you shaken, not stirred. One mission, Bunker 2, tasks you with breaking Bond out of a jail cell with Natalia, who, by the way, is needed to be rescued far too much in this game, all the while trying to retrieve his weapons and complete auxiliary objectives. If you so much as sneeze in this level or trip an alarm, you will have a literal horde of Russian troops come down on you. This makes silenced weapons essential, but Bond's judo chop is not all that effective, and the secret throwing knives you find are so finicky to use, it's almost laughable. Your success in this mission will come down to carefully learning the guard's movement patterns, knowing when and where to hide, and not getting so enraged that you shatter your controller against the wall. Another mission that had me on the ropes is one of the later ones where at one point you have to protect Natalia, freaking useless Natalia, as she shuts down the Goldeneye satellite. I don't know what it was, but I just kept dropping the ball on this one, missing some random guard that was able to slip by me and just cap Nat right in the face. Oh, I'm sorry, Natalia. Is my saving your life annoying you? But even when the difficulty seems insurmountable, there's always a trick to get you through the tough spots. Getting mad because old blockhead here keeps getting shot? Well, stand right here where the enemies spawn and just mow them down when they come. Keep getting rocked in this hallway? Well, just shoot the explosive barrels, filling the hall, causing a chain reaction. James Bond is a man who is always thinking on his feet, and this game challenges you to do the same. Also, while we're on the subject, everything explodes in Goldeneye. Everything. Alarms, boom. Computers, boom. Crates, boom. The only bad thing about this is that it makes a lot of things in the environment a danger to you. But then again, it makes them a danger to your enemies as well. Enemies in Goldeneye range from completely inept to ruthless killing machines. Like bowling pins, they have a tendency to pile up in doorways, letting you knock them down one by one. But while it's fun to crack jokes at these polygonal pinheads' expense, I should mention that the enemies in Goldeneye are one of the most impressive aspects about this game. For starters, the way they're animated was and still remains impressive. This is some great motion capture on display here, with their running, attacking, and most importantly, death animations depicted realistically. Bad guys would contextually react depending on which body part you shot. This is a major aspect that added to the game's immersion, and the feedback you get from damage animations is a key factor in why the shooting mechanics feel so satisfying. I mean, consider that rival games at the time were content with depicting their baddies as 2D sprites, with a few frames of animation. Even Quake's 3D monsters were pretty choppy in their animations. Compared to Goldeneye, there's no competition. And yeah, while some of their behavior is laughable now, there was some effort put into these guys' AI. Bad guys would chase you if you ran away from them, they would try to flank you, they kneeled to shoot you, would dodge out of the way, and God help you if they throw a grenade. The only thing I hate is that none of these guys make audible footsteps when they run, making it way too easy for them to sneak up on you. And since this game loves spawning in new enemies behind you, expect to get randomly shot in the back a lot in this game. Oh, by the way, getting shot in Goldeneye drives me absolutely crazy. Taking a bullet will jostle you all around, throwing off any aim you had, on top of the fact that getting shot will interrupt your firing. So if enough enemies are firing at you, it is possible to get stun locked into oblivion. second. It's like stubbing your toe and getting slapped in the face at the same time. You don't even have a chance to react. It's just another maddening aspect of this game's retro difficulty. Now, it seems like I'm being fairly critical of Goldeneye, but in reality, I'm just venting a little frustration from my playtime. In truth, the thing I had to remember, and that you should remember too, is that this is just how games were back in the day. They were meant to be a challenge, something that the player really had to spend time to master. Something that, well, honestly had to keep you renting the game from Blockbuster every weekend. The player is meant to struggle in Goldeneye. They're meant to fail at these missions and try them over and over. Each time figuring out where enemy placements are, how to finish objectives, and what sort of tricky things can cause an instant failure. And once you've figured out all the ins and outs, you can eventually blow through these missions like you're actually James Bond himself, which is a very satisfying feeling. After that, you bump up the difficulty, add a few more objectives, and start the process over. And when you have that mastered, then you start playing to best your times. And as you achieve faster and faster times, you start unlocking cheats, which do fun things like give your enemies elephantitis. And hey, after that, maybe try and beat the times of your buddies, which then adds a whole new competitive dynamic to the single-player game. In fact, while Goldeneye might not be the living room staple it was, the game still lives on and thrives in the speedrunning community. I would highly encourage all of you to check out some of the speedrunning videos for this game on YouTube. They are wild and incredibly entertaining.
Yeah! Got a fucking 112, baby! That's right! You see that clutchness?
I do. I see it. I'm impressed. Even the game's blurry visuals held a lot of charm for me. Nowadays, you often see this game emulated with sharper and crisper visuals, and to be honest, I think something is kind of lost here. Kind of like when you take a movie from the 80s and remaster it in HD, and suddenly all the special effects look way faker. I don't know, there's just something authentic about playing with the screen looking like it's got Vaseline smeared all over it. That's not to say there aren't downsides. Shooting fools at a distance requires a lot of squinting, and the performance. Oh man, the performance. Goldeneye isn't unplayable, but it's close. Certain levels absolutely chug in this game, which is not fun to look at or fun to play. But hey, at least the music still slaps as hard as it did back in '97. This is a good jam to bang to if you ask me. But you know, with all the time I've spent talking about Goldeneye, I have yet to touch on what I think is the best part of the whole game. I mean, look, for all the innovations and influences that came from the single-player campaign, Goldeneye split-screen multiplayer is still where it's at. Initially an afterthought added 6 months before release, Goldeneye's multiplayer mode was a phenomenon that helped popularize split-screen multiplayer in just about every console shooter to come after. If you grew up in the 90s and played video games, there's a high chance you were at many a sleepover staying up late, eating junk food, and smoking your friends at Goldeneye. I captured this footage with my family, and within minutes of our first match, we were giggling like idiots, running around trying to shoot each other with magnums and silenced pistols. It's still so goddamn fun, and to be honest, the retro jankiness of it all makes it an even better experience. It's not balanced, it's not some finely tuned competitive experience. It's silly, goofy fun that's gonna make you talk shit to your friends and laugh until your sides hurt, and that's what makes it great. That frame rate though is oof. In fact, this brings me to my final thought, or rather question, regarding Goldeneye. Why isn't there a remaster of this game? Well, as it turns out, there almost was. This right here is leaked footage of an almost complete remaster of Goldeneye 007 developed by Rare themselves. Remastered in a similar style to the Xbox version of Perfect Dark, this version of Goldeneye aimed to spruce up the graphics, have a far more stable frame rate, and the ability to switch between original and remastered graphics, along with online multiplayer. The cancellation came about when issues sprang up concerning the rights with Nintendo of Japan. It's a real shame that this didn't come to pass because Goldeneye could easily recapture its phenomenon with the younger generations. I mean, come on, competing for best times through online leaderboards? This is a no-brainer. Who's to say if we'll ever see this remaster or any remaster of Goldeneye, but if you ask me, with how simpatico Microsoft and Nintendo have been of late, and the 007 gaming license likely back with the Broccolis, I wouldn't be shocked if Goldeneye resurfaced, likely included with a Nintendo Switch version of Rare Replay. Who knows? What do you guys think? Throw me some theories in the comments. Playing Goldeneye in 2020 at times made me want to chuck the N64 out the window, but I still enjoyed my time with it, and I have a lot of appreciation for Rare's design choices and the long-lasting effect they had on the genre and the industry. Goldeneye, a classic that may have a few rough edges in its old age, but still is a game that will eat up an afternoon and bring smiles all around. A true classic that deserves a refresh and a stiff Vesper Martini. But with that, I think this is a good time to roll the credits and wrap this up. Be sure to leave me a comment telling me some of your favorite Goldeneye memories. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, hit that subscribe button, and share. It is a massive help for this channel. I post videos every Thursday, so be sure to ring that notification bell so you are the first to see them. I'm Kirk, and thank you for watching this video. Stay safe out there.